And here's the destruction of the Tu S-5 artillery system using a HIMARS missile. The Russians concealed the SA-15 Gauntlet surface-to-air missile system among the trees. It is designed to engage and destroy aerial targets, including aircraft, helicopters, and unmanned aerial vehicles. It is a highly valuable weapon worth up to $10 million. But the Ukrainians tracked its coordinates and destroyed it with just one HIMARS missile. The uncontrolled explosion of ammunition confirms the destruction of the system. It is evident that the Ukrainian army has accumulated enough HIMARS ammunition to actively employ them during their counteroffensive. Currently, the command of the Ukrainian army is focused on destroying as much Russian artillery and other military capabilities as possible, and only then will it be possible to deliver the main strike and break through the Russian defense. One of the main tasks is to destroy as many Russian ammunition as possible, which they typically hide among thickets and trees. Take a look at this video. Ukrainian reconnaissance found a bunch of Russian anti-tank mines among the trees. To destroy it, it was enough to drop one grenade from a drone.
If you subscribe, may God give you $1 million.
The explosion created a crater in the ground, and all the trees burned down. In this video, we can witness the detonation of a large number of ammunition hidden among the trees. Donetsk region. Russian tin cans are about to advance. The first tank explodes on a mine. A Ukrainian soldier loads a 155mm shell. A shot. Cluster ammunition is used. Everything's up in smoke. You gotta admire this drone's marksmanship. It's impressive. This tank's visibility is compromised. It's rolling into a hole and becoming an easy target. The attack has failed. At the same time, the drones were hunting this armored vehicle. The APC gets the first hit. They drive on through. Second hit. The drone goes right under the tank's gun. It can't keep moving. In a while, it's swallowed up by flames. Late night. A drone with a thermal imager observes several more targets. They are being hunted. The Ukrainian points the javelin at the target. A massive detonation. Take a look at this without thermal imaging. Second APC gets closer. It shoots at ghost targets and receives a gift from the AFU.
If you subscribe, may God give you $1 million.
This multi-purpose light armored vehicle is moving through a mined field. Predictably, it hits a mine and explodes. To ensure its complete destruction, a kamikaze drone is sent in. You see 3 destroyed vehicles, and a 4th tank decided to try its luck. Well, it wasn't fortunate. The tank is fully clad in additional armor and equipped with a mine roller, but this didn't save it from the TM-62. Look, its track was damaged and thrown forward. A Russian infantry fighting vehicle was on its way to a mission, but was stopped by a planted mine. It was then attacked by drones. The second drone hit the wheels, completely immobilizing the vehicle. At the same time, a lightly armored vehicle attempted to flank Ukrainian positions from the other side, but also hit an anti-tank mine. The detonation of a turtle tank on 6 mines at once. If you look closer, you can see the mine roller, which probably absorbed some of the impact. A little later, you can see one very lucky crew member running away from the tank. Take another look at this series of explosions. The Russians brought a truck loaded with shells, intended for the nearby Tu S-7 self-propelled artillery system. However, HIMARS disrupted their logistical efforts. The cluster munition explodes, and in just a moment, a powerful explosion. As a result, the ammunition truck was literally vaporized, and the artillery system sustained significant damage, making it unlikely to perform its functions in the near future. A drone is observing the relocation of a BM-27 Uragan. The vehicle covers a considerable distance and eventually halts in a dense grove of trees. Perhaps the camouflage would have worked in a different scenario, but not this time. This SPH has been messing with the Ukrainians for a long time. Reconnaissance has spotted it. The drone is on its way. One hit, and $1.5 million becomes a dust ruffle. The Ukrainian tank, the Russian military truck transporting a howitzer and its ammunition did not survive. A Ukrainian FPV drone flew directly into the truck bed, causing an explosion that sparked a fire. The Russians immediately stopped and began running in all directions, knowing that more explosions were imminent. And that's exactly what happened. The flames reached such high temperatures that they melted the truck's body. And the ammunition explosions that started shortly afterward completely destroyed the equipment. Now, here's a unique video. The Russians hastily abandoned the armored vehicle filled with explosives. According to their plan, this armored vehicle was supposed to reach the Ukrainian bunker on its own and detonate it. However, the Ukrainians destroy this armored personnel carrier in advance using an anti-tank missile. Here's another example. A Russian armored personnel carrier was moving towards Ukrainian positions. Ukrainian soldiers fired an anti-tank missile at it. The enormous explosion once again proves that there was a significant amount of explosive material in the vehicle. And here, the Russians loaded an old T-55 tank with 6 tons of TNT. The Ukrainians hit it with a grenade launcher, causing an explosion with an incredible force of the blast wave. Ukrainian artillery is also destroying another important Russian equipment. Reconnaissance has detected the Uragan multiple rocket launcher system. This system launches unguided rockets with significant destructive power. Using the Uragan systems, the Russians daily shell Ukrainian cities near the front lines, causing significant damage to the infrastructure. And with just a single Excalibur projectile, they managed to hit the target and destroy this devastating Russian weapon. This made it possible to successfully evacuate the mission from the danger zone, and if necessary, the Bradley can also engage in close combat, burning out enemy positions and drawing their forces away while the main attack is made by assault units on the other side. The APC's automatic cannon is paired with a 7.62mm M240C machine gun. An unexpected attack by such a vehicle on the positions of an enemy not ready to fight back becomes the decisive card of the operation and allows the AFU to force the enemy out of another position. Here's a very unsuccessful assault attempt involving an IFV and a turtle tank. The IFV is the first to break through, and the drone instantly locks onto it. It quickly flies toward the target and delivers a strike. The vehicle catches fire. The crew abandons the burning machine and flees. The IFV has been neutralized. The turtle tank continues its mission, advancing further. The tank rapidly picks up speed, but another drone has already been launched in pursuit. The drone strikes, but the impact hits the metal roof armor, and the tank continues its movement. An artillery shell nearly hits and explodes nearby. It was lucky as it continues moving forward, but soon falls victim to 2 mines. The mine plow saves it. The artillery continues to strike. Suddenly, the tank turns and drives in the opposite direction. You can clearly see the tracks it left behind, but it started to carve out a new route that turned into a real hell for it. One by one, it gathers the mines scattered across this field with its plow. It's simply incredible, but it keeps moving. Eventually, the turtle tank comes to a stop. The crew abandons the vehicle and flees as far away as possible because a Ukrainian kamikaze drone has already been dispatched to destroy it. A detonation occurs, and after a while, it is completely engulfed in flames. This is truly a unique occurrence. Comments are indeed unnecessary here. Just watch. Even the mine plow couldn't withstand this series of explosions. It's almost 6 in the morning, and this car, filled with Russian assault troops, is moving across an open field, navigating through craters left by artillery shells. They are heading toward Ukrainian positions located here, and are also setting up defenses in the partially intact structures. But look at the field. They're undeterred by the fact that it's most likely mined and under the fire control of artillery, which is now beginning to target them. The shells explode nearby but miss their target. The vehicle was almost at its destination when an anti-tank mine suddenly shattered all of the Russians' plans. Look, just a moment before the explosion, you can see that there were less than 100 meters left to the Ukrainian trenches. Ten minutes later, another car was spotted attempting to pass nearby via a different route, but heading toward the same target. The drone operator closely monitors it. Inside the vehicle are 6 stormtroopers. Note that the car is missing its doors, as they deliberately removed them to exit the vehicle quickly in case of danger. To test their ability to react swiftly to threats, a kamikaze drone is deployed. Some of them failed the test, while the rest took cover in a nearby bunker. Another drone continued to carry out its mission. An enemy multiple rocket launcher was seen in this video, trying to hide in the trees. As we can see, it failed. Just look at the massive explosion and the hundreds of thousands of pieces of shrapnel. And this is a self-propelled artillery unit that was camouflaged in the trees. The reconnaissance drone relayed the information for the strike. The artillery unit immediately bursts into flames from a precision hit. And then the ammunition inside is detonated. Specialized equipment is often accompanied by a column of other military vehicles. This time, military intelligence spotted them before they could escape. The first precise shot destroys an enemy tank, causing the column to stop to change direction and regroup. But that pause was enough for HIMARS to fire another rocket, this time with cluster munitions, stopping the group permanently. Cluster munitions are effective not only against large groups of equipment. Sometimes it's worthwhile to use them on a single target if it's valuable enough. The strike occurred precisely at the moment when a Russian military truck delivered ammunition to a Howitzer 2S7 self-propelled artillery system. As a result, both pieces of equipment were spectacularly and effectively destroyed. Another Howitzer 2S7 was stationed nearby in the forest, firing at Ukrainian positions. The Russians chose a very good spot for camouflage. The trees make it difficult for regular drones to spot and destroy the target. To more accurately determine its location, a thermal imaging camera had to be used. As immediately as the target was detected, a HIMARS precision strike destroyed it. Through the smokescreen, we can't make out all the details, but on the thermal imaging camera, the fire and the destroyed frame of the Russian artillery system are clearly visible. The Ukrainian military has breached the state border of the Russian Federation. Look, a significant number of Ukrainian vehicles are moving towards the border. Among them, you can spot the Leopard 2A6, which we will discuss in more detail shortly. At the same time, engineering equipment is already working directly at the border. The Product 454 lane clearing vehicle is heading for demining operations. The mines have been successfully cleared, but there are still many obstacles ahead. Let's take a look from a different angle. When the sun rose, all the vehicles were found to be immobilized and abandoned. Drones continued striking, completely destroying the vehicles. Look, the heavy metal sheets flew in all directions as if they were paper. The burning vehicles detonate. Nearby, an infantry fighting vehicle is targeted, and a drone is already on its way to destroy it. Next in line for destruction is the turtle tank. The Russians used a very large amount of equipment, or rather disposed of it, so the drones have plenty of work to do. Another Ukrainian hexacopter, the Vampire, destroys a building with an ammunition depot by dropping a TM-62 anti-tank mine. In this industrial building, another Russian depot was found. The Vampire precisely drops a mine through a hole in the reinforced concrete ceiling. In the drone's thermal imaging camera, you can see thick smoke enveloping the entire interior of the building. Donetsk region. A Russian BMP is moving along a road where the Vampire hexacopter has planted a mine. After the explosion, there is a massive detonation of the ammunition. The vehicle is turned into scrap metal. On the front lines, the Russians are deploying all their resources to advance, using a vast amount of equipment in mechanized assaults. Ukrainian forces are holding the line, but are gradually forced to retreat to safer positions due to limited resources and the numerical superiority of the Russians. Drones play a significant role in holding back the enemy, but an equally powerful and highly effective weapon that is less often discussed is the use of mines. This IFB is confidently heading towards Ukrainian positions. An anti-tank mine put a stop to its plans. But if the HIMARS MLRS operator finds a target, it will be destroyed. After the direct hit, the ammunition of the Russian equipment continued to explode for several minutes. Despite being a relatively new type of weapon in the Russian army, practical experience has shown that it has quite weak protection, and a direct hit almost always leads to the complete destruction of the system along with the personnel operating it. American MLRS have performed exceptionally well in the Russian-Ukrainian war and have significantly aided the Ukrainians in destroying the enemy across all front lines. They have repeatedly halted the Russians' advance even at the preparation stage. In operations to destroy enemy equipment, it is also very important to choose the right time to strike. For example, here, the Russian Grad MLRS launched a salvo of missiles and left its position. Russian soldiers are heading for a new supply of ammunition. Meanwhile, another Grad is heading to this location to replenish its supplies as well. The Ukrainians could have destroyed the first target while it was firing. However, by waiting just a couple of minutes, they now have the chance to destroy 3 targets with a single shot, 2 MLRS and an ammunition depot. The HIMARS missile hit the warehouse directly. At first, the shells stored there began to explode, and only then could we see the detonation of the launchers. The right tactical decision by the Ukrainian command helped to save their own missiles and hit more targets in one strike. Even when only one unit of an anti-aircraft missile system, like the Buk M2, is destroyed, it is already a very good result. Under sanctions, it is quite difficult for the Russian Federation to produce new equipment, and they also need to train personnel. So each such video of destruction is a small victory over the aggressor. The video shows Russian vehicles moving. They were spotted by aerial reconnaissance. The information is instantly transmitted, and HIMARS strikes. And accurate hits. A column of military vehicles turns into a pile of metal. Because of the hit, the ammunition fires. A very powerful explosion, and we see the entire column of military vehicles destroyed. And here's another video of the destruction of a Russian convoy of vehicles. The convoy of vehicles has no chance of survival from such powerful and accurate hits. No time to run away. Ukrainian forces are increasingly using the HIMARS and M270 rocket launchers to directly destroy Russian military equipment. Aerial reconnaissance has located 2 Russian BM-21 Grad rocket artillery systems. They will now be destroyed by a HIMARS missile. Just a reminder, the Russian BM-21 Grad is the most common multiple rocket launcher system in the Russian army. So, the HIMARS delivers a missile strike. The Grad BM is destroyed. It's on fire, and then all its projectiles explode. The second HIMARS missile destroyed another Grad BM launcher. Another Grad BM launcher was detected nearby and also destroyed by a HIMARS missile. This is a routine and daily practice. Here's another Grad launcher, and once again the HIMARS missile hits its target. And now we have a large caliber target. A Russian self-propelled howitzer, the Tu-S-19, is hiding among the trees. However, the HIMARS missile destroys it. Another Tu-S-19 self-propelled howitzer is destroyed by a HIMARS missile. The Russian self-propelled artillery system Tornado is also positioned amidst the green trees. The HIMARS receives the coordinates and delivers a missile strike to that location. And although the missile hit very close, you have no doubt that the target is affected. The destructive power of the M31A1 missile is enormous. The warhead of the missile can impact targets within a radius of up to 150 meters from the point of detonation. Pay attention to this powerful explosion. It's the explosion of a Russian armored personnel carrier. Sometimes, the Russians load explosives into armored vehicles and send them towards Ukrainian positions. However, the Ukrainians detonate them in advance. In this forest plantation, one such armored personnel carrier loaded with explosives was stopped. It caught fire and later exploded. An explosion of such magnitude can destroy a fortified bunker, which is why the Russians use this tactic. Another massive mechanized assault by the Russian army. Anti-tank mines slowed the movement of the column, allowing Ukrainian forces to coordinate their actions, send in drones, and direct artillery fire. On the other side, the column of vehicles managed to break through into the village but found itself trapped. Ukrainian troops began to destroy it with a wide range of weaponry: drones, cluster munitions, and rocket launchers. For this assault, the Russians deployed at least 6 vehicles. The turtle tank hits a mine. At that very moment, it's finished off with a javelin shot. Artillery and drones also joined in. The roads near the tree lines are usually mined, but the drivers of these armored vehicles must have forgotten about that. Accurate destruction of the Russian BM-21 Grad multiple rocket launcher, followed by the triggering of the ammunition. Look at that hit in slow motion. The missile explodes right above the driver's cab, a precision hit. In this video, you can see a Russian tank that got blown up by a mine. Its torn track is evidence of that. The tank crew hastily abandons their tank, taking only the most valuable belongings. Just a few minutes ago, this tank was returning to the rear after completing a combat mission when it was hit by a Russian mine. However, the mines were not camouflaged. We can even see them from above. We have another video taken from a different angle where it is also evident that mines are placed on the road, but the crew's still driving forward. They abandon their tank, and the Ukrainians destroy it shortly afterward with an anti-tank missile. Similar situations often occur with Russian tank crews. After the battle, they return to their original positions and get blown up by their own mines. Typically, they abandon their tanks and flee, and the Ukrainians destroy them. By the way, pay attention. In this video, you can clearly see the flight of an anti-tank missile. It's most likely a javelin. And here the Russians have captured footage of the Ukrainian drone at work. It's clearly visible in the sky. 3, 2, 1. Excellent ending, if you agree. Give us a like. In the morning, a Russian SA-10 Grumble air defense vehicle hit their own mines. Look at how the tire was torn apart. You can also see the tracks of another vehicle that moved through the area at night, narrowly missing the mines. The video shows just how close the wheel came to hitting the mine. The unconventional approach of Ukrainian forces using anti-tank mines on various types of hexacopters has significantly changed the situation on the battlefield. The Baba Yaga hexacopter, without specifically aiming for open hatches, drops an anti-tank TM-62 mine on a Russian T-72 tank. The vehicle, along with its ammunition, detonates. In this video, a mine hits a TOS-1A multiple rocket launcher. Interestingly, after the explosion, you can see projectiles detonating and flying very close to the hexacopter. This is not the first time that Russians have managed to destroy a Leopard tank. Look, in all cases, the tank remained intact, and its turret was not blown off by dozens of meters. This is all thanks to the thoughtful arrangement of ammunition in an armored capsule, which is equipped with a special blowout panel. It effectively directs the heat and pressure from an explosion away from the tank itself. Let's return to the battlefield. The Russian IFV moves along the tree line. A drone, acting like a tiny firecracker, approaches the vehicle, which occupies a rather unpleasant role as a powder keg. A mushroom cloud of smoke and fire rises tens of meters into the air. One of the hottest spots on the front lines. Look, the field is completely scorched, pockmarked with craters from artillery shells. Dozens, if not hundreds, of various military vehicles have been lost by the Russians in their unsuccessful attempts to advance further. The Ukrainian military is making titanic efforts to hold back yet another mechanized assault. And now, another vehicle is ready to head out for disposal. The assault begins. The artillery begins to fire. The vehicles ahead explode on landmines. Incredible how the armor shatters into pieces. Dozens of drones soar into the air to finally destroy the damaged and abandoned Russian vehicles. Right now, you see 5 destroyed units of equipment. The Russians deployed another 4 units to try to break through the Ukrainian defenses. A tank with a mine plow detonates on a mine and stops the entire column. The equipment turns around and retreats. But one by one, they explode on mines. The result of this brief assault is a failure, with 4 units of equipment destroyed. Another example, soldiers expertly mined the field on the approaches to their positions. And now from their trenches, they watch as a heap of equipment turns into scrap metal in yet another assault attempt. Of course, weapons like the Javelin or HIMARS are also effective against Russian columns. However, a single planted mine is on combat duty around the clock and can very easily turn a Russian tank into a ball of fire. And it was spotted 2 command posts and a lot of military vehicles. It's one of the most powerful scenes where heroes destroy so many military vehicles. Fire everywhere, shell detonation, smoke. HIMARS spares no one and nothing. The column began to stretch out and scatter in different directions. The destroyed equipment stands motionless. A kamikaze drone catches up to another IFV. Look from another angle. Direct hit. A fire breaks out, forcing the vehicle to stop. This vehicle had surged ahead and managed to advance further, but artillery was targeting it. A major mistake was the decision to start turning around. The trees on both sides prevented a quick maneuver, leaving it stuck in place. This gave the artillery time to take aim and destroy the armored vehicle. The other members of the group veered off the field and began wandering through the streets of a destroyed village. But the buildings didn't give them any advantage against the drones. The rest were stopped by kamikaze drones near the railway and on the outskirts. The offensive failed, and the damaged and abandoned equipment was left for drone operators to hone their skills, as they began dropping explosives into vulnerable spots and open hatches. This enraged the Russians, and later that night, they attempted to target Ukrainian positions with a BM-21 MLRS, fully loaded with 122mm rockets. After such an explosion, it can be said that nothing remains of the vehicle. Additionally, an IFV was already heading towards Ukrainian positions to deploy infantry immediately after the bombardment. The first drone delivers a strike. The second drone completely and irreversibly destroys the vehicle, thwarting the Russians' plans. Donetsk region, where yet another incredible amount of equipment is involved in an assault attempt. The first APC is blown up by an anti-tank mine. Another APC almost reached its target, driving up close to the Ukrainian trenches. However, it too was met with a hidden mine. The explosion triggers an immediate detonation that utterly destroys the vehicle. From the other flank, a tank with a mine plow breaks through the tree line, charred from shelling. These three vehicles have fared worse. However, after hitting a few mines, the plow of the tank can't take it anymore, and on the next mine, the tank itself is blown to pieces.
A column of Russians attempted to storm a small village but immediately fell into a trap. The Ukrainians began an attack from all sides, deploying a large number of FPV drones, mines, and camouflage soldiers. One of the infantry vehicles was hit by the Ukrainians so spectacularly that, at first glance, it almost looks like a scene from a movie. The Russians managed to abandon the burning vehicle, but most likely this won't save them. The enemy hadn't even reached the village yet and was already starting to lose their equipment one by one. With the help of remote mining systems and airstrikes, 4 Russian APCs and 2 tanks were quickly sent to hell. Most of the column was destroyed right on the road or nearby, while the surviving vehicles scattered in all directions to escape. A few tanks managed to break into the village, but their journey ended very quickly. Another 3 tanks decided to take a different route, but Ukrainian artillery was waiting for them and precisely destroyed 2 units. The crew of the 3rd tank was probably glad to have gotten past the others first, but their happiness did not last long. Realizing that the offensive had failed, the surviving Russians tried to escape in a panic from the fire.
A Ukrainian Mavic drone captures the movement of a Russian IFV heading towards recently reclaimed positions in the Kursk region. The situation is also being monitored on the screens at the command post. The IFV confidently continues moving forward and soon spots 2 tanks ahead. The Russians likely assume these are knocked out and abandoned vehicles. However, the tanks turn out to be Ukrainian and fully combat ready. The turret of the first tank begins to rotate and fires at close range. After the hit, the smoke begins to clear, revealing the shocked crew members scattering in different directions. One of them runs towards the tree line, while the others, panicking, dash into the open field. Later, Ukrainian forces took them captive. Meanwhile, the second tank fires, finishing off the abandoned vehicle. Just take a look and listen to how emotionally the command post reacts to the success. Russian APCs are preparing to advance in the direction of Chasiv Yar. Russian APC is confidently moving forward. An anti-tank mine is on its way. The Russian unit did not have a chance to meet the Ukrainian assault troops with precision fire. The M242 Bushmaster chain gun can maintain a high rate of fire to overwhelm enemy forces. Another gift arrives in the occupier's rear. A Ukrainian FPV that hits the Russians' hideout. The building they occupy turns into a fire trap, which is also bombarded from above by Mavic drops. The extent of the damage is shown by the thermal imaging camera on the drone. It allows the armed forces to make sure that all targets are eliminated. After completing the combat mission, the Bradley APC returns to base. The road is extremely difficult. Part of the way the armored vehicle has to travel on a road that is under partial enemy fire control and is heavily shelled. However, the APC crew is informed by air reconnaissance in which direction the enemy is moving. Bradley continues to fire at full speed to suppress the enemy and thus retains the initiative.
It's very difficult to fight when you don't even know where the fire is coming from. This time, the tank still survived and somehow managed to break out of the encirclement. Perhaps he and his comrade could have escaped. However, they encountered several Ukrainian soldiers who opened fire with an RPG. The missile hits a tree and misses its target, but luck is not on the Russian side today. After driving a couple more meters, it hits a mine. Another tank, seeing the explosion, quickly began to flee in the opposite direction, but didn't manage to travel even 50 feet. Give a thumbs up to the Ukrainian soldiers for such an outstanding defensive operation, and we'll tell you about what's happening on other parts of the front.
2 tanks of the AFU drove to their positions and started fighting. An experienced crew knows how to conduct an effective attack. The first vehicle is firing machine gun fire, which suppresses the enemy forces. Behind it, the second tank fires a series of cannon shots. The tanks line up in a single row and engage in active fire with the Russian group in front. The Ukrainians periodically continue to move to prevent the enemy from taking aim and finding the best position for a counterattack. The shots from the guns are fired in turns. Thus, while one tank is reloading its main weapon, the other is firing. This is how the density of fire is achieved, which does not allow the enemy to recover. In the afternoon, a Ukrainian tank and a Bradley were almost ambushed. On the sides of the road, the Russians set up their positions to cover the enemy's vehicles, with fire from both sides at the right moment. However, the AFU was the first to start the battle, seized the initiative, and made a breakthrough. Their frontal armor allowed them to withstand Russian assault rifles and machine guns, and they simply did not have time to prepare anti-tank weapons. The powerful fire allowed the tanks to break through to the enemy fortifications that the Russians had set up in the village on the right flank. The occupiers' positions were quickly destroyed by Ukrainian guns. The third target is trying to maneuver. The vehicle is left in a wooded area. It's burned by a drone strike. And here the Russians ran out of fuel. They were forced to leave the armored vehicles to be torn apart by the drones. Ukrainian drones are happy to carry out this mission. A few strikes are enough to burn an APC and a tank to the ground. The AFU is appreciative of the gift. And this video shows the destruction of an enemy BM-21 Grad multiple rocket launcher and ammunition depot in the southern sector of the front line. The Special Operations Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine adjusted their fire on the enemy targets. A reconnaissance drone was nearly destroyed by a powerful shell explosion, but the drone survived and continued its reconnaissance mission. A reconnaissance drone spotted a $100 million SA-17 Grizzly launcher, and then HIMARS destroys it with a precision strike, Donetsk direction. Russian troops were on their way to the assault. The occupiers' IFV accelerated under the cover of a landing and moved to break through. A mine that Ukrainian troops had placed on the road went off. The explosion did not cause serious damage to the Russians. There is an accurate hit. The APC loses control and collides with an obstacle with an anti-tank mine under it. But the Russians continued their offensive. They sent the MTLB by another route, through the field. The tin can steps on several mines simultaneously. Ukrainian FPVs flew out to destroy the target. Kamikaze drones allow for precise strikes to save ammunition in the face of daily attacks by Russian invaders. A surveillance drone recorded an FPV hit from the side of a Russian MTLB. The first hit damaged and slowed down the enemy combat vehicle, allowing it to be finally destroyed further. The Russians have placed structures on the vehicles that take the brunt of a kamikaze drone or dropped ammunition. Therefore, the pilot of the Ukrainian Mavic dropped several charges in exactly the same place. This allowed him to set fire to the enemy's equipment, despite its defense. A Ukrainian kamikaze drone was chasing a Russian armored personnel carrier. The pilot accelerated the FPV so that the drone would hit the target when it was jammed by the EW. Another FPV drone hits the hull of the MTLB, and the Russian vehicle loses control and hits a tree before coming to a complete stop. The Russians tried to hide another MTLB. They failed. A direct hit from the FPV destroyed the vehicle. Russians tried to move at night to evacuate the wounded APC more easily. A Ukrainian pilot dropped a grenade from a drone equipped with a night vision camera. A direct hit in the area of the hatch stunned the occupier's APC. Using grenades, the AFU burns 2 cans with fascist letters V at once. The attack begins with the destruction of a tank by a mine. The Russians' significant advantage in terms of equipment and manpower allows them to launch a massive offensive right under fire. But so far, the occupiers have not been able to reach their destination. Combining pre-prepared minefields with artillery and FPV fire, the AFU managed to destroy several enemy APCs and tanks on the outskirts of the assault positions. Another tank is stepping on a mine. A kamikaze drone stops an enemy APC. Another drone was nearby and immediately finished off a Russian tin can. Late night, a drone with a thermal imager observes several more targets. They are being hunted. The Ukrainian points the javelin at the target. A massive detonation. Take a look at this without thermal imaging. Second APC gets closer. It shoots at ghost targets and receives a gift from the AFU. The war machines tried to hide in the dense forest, but failed. Followed by ignition and further detonation. Ammunition like lasers going off in different directions.
Look at this interesting incident. 3 Russian APCs are delivering infantry for an assault on Ukrainian positions in a tree line. Some of the Russians thought it would be easier to hide among the ruined houses, as there was a lower chance of encountering a mine there. However, they did not analyze that drones are much more maneuverable than a large and slow tank. This military truck is certainly faster than a tank, but it also couldn't escape very far. Like its comrades, it also experienced the power of Ukrainian mines. Gradually, the Russians lost, one by one, almost all of the military vehicles involved in the offensive, without even seeing a single Ukrainian soldier.
But it's a lot easier when the drone can fly right in, like this time. Notice how exquisitely it's done. For a moment, you might think nothing's going to happen, but no. An explosion of unbelievable power. Either in minefields or under the attack of another drone
that had been waiting for someone to get into its crosshairs. The Ukrainians were very well prepared for this battle and didn't hold back on explosives.
And another Russian SA-17 was spotted near Antonivka and immediately destroyed with a massive detonation of ammunition. But Ukrainian forces also occasionally fall into mine traps. The Ukrainian armored personnel carrier arrived to pick up soldiers from the front lines for rotation. However, when it was returning and crossing the road, it got hit by a mine. There might have been multiple mines there, judging by the intensity of the explosion. In these video footage, the Russians were launching a counterattack but ended up losing all their tanks to the mine barrier set up by Ukrainian soldiers. The front line is so saturated with mines that neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians can advance quickly. The Russians have mined vast areas, dug numerous trenches, and filled them with personnel.
The vehicles are firing and approaching the Ukrainian positions. However, when they disembarked the troops, the Russian soldiers, instead of advancing to attack, began to flee back. This indicates the low morale of the infantrymen. They knew they had no chance in this fight. The infantry ran off to a nearby village and started hiding in abandoned houses. But surprises awaited them there as well. Ukrainians quickly detected their location using a reconnaissance drone, and a Ukrainian APC began precise fire until all of them were eliminated. On the other side of the village, a Ukrainian tank was hunting down Russian soldiers hiding in the ruined buildings. The tank maneuvered skillfully, aiming to keep the entire perimeter under control. It carefully advanced forward, gradually taking out the enemy's fortified positions. But, just as it paused, the Russians launched an attack using a Lancet drone. The tank withstood the hit and even continued to carry out its mission. Immediately after the drone attack, the Russians attempted to hit the tank with artillery. And once again, the tank remained unharmed.
Early morning, a large column of Russian tanks is moving towards the positions of the AFU. The attack begins. The first target is an APC. A Ukrainian soldier fires an RPG. First blood. Javelin goes in. 2 APCs are no longer functional. The tank is trying to retreat. AFU drones couldn't allow that. Precision hit the engine. The tank is stopped. All that's left is to finish them off. The armored vehicles are engulfed in fire. The attack has been stopped. Drones spotted a concentration of Russian forces. The long-range guns started working. The occupiers' APCs are exploding on mines. And then the final elimination of the enemy's equipment was completed by the AFU's FPV drones. You can watch their work from the first person. A maneuverable flight that allows you to avoid machine gun fire from Russian tanks ends with a sharp turn, a sharp approach, and a strike. Russian tanks and armored vehicles have strong protection and continue to move even after an indirect hit. This is a difficult target. The Ukrainian ATGM can easily penetrate this defense. This APC is no exception. The coordinated work of the drones allows us to hunt tanks like prey. After hitting the ammunition, the armored vehicles don't stand a chance. The detonation turns a formidable Russian tank into a ball of fire. And this drone delivers the final strike in this assault.
At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the Russians finally located and dispatched an IFV. However, this was no longer a surprise, and the Ukrainian forces deployed a drone that struck the vehicle. Almost immediately, the IFV came to a halt, and the Russian soldiers abandoned it, fleeing in different directions. Meanwhile, another drone was launched to finish off the IFV. In their panic, the Russians, as usual, left the vehicle's doors open, which allowed for a more efficient use of drones to destroy the machine. The third attempt ended in complete failure, as even the lightly armored vehicle, with various modifications against drones, was ineffective. The abandoned IFV was left to burn. Perhaps the secret to success lies in the quantity of equipment? Let's find out by examining the next situation. The assault, involving more than 5 vehicles, began under the cover of smoke screens. Russian equipment, under artillery fire, tries to advance toward the Ukrainian stronghold. In addition to the artillery fire, drones joined the resistance. One of them heads for a frontal collision with a turtle tank, whose armor is further reinforced with metal shields, and a mine-clearing plow is mounted at the front. That didn't save it from being destroyed. Look at this hit and the explosion from another drone that was adjusting the artillery fire. Notice how high the turret flew. In the morning, drones flew in to finish this poor guy off. Several hits. And the final one right in the turret. Take another look. In the other direction, the Russians made a miserable attack. 2 tanks have already been stopped. The next one hits a mine. Drone flies out to a new target. It's a clean hit. The tank loses control. Grenade drop. Target destroyed. The other part of the column has been destroyed by the drones. First one hits the tank's backside. Second drone goes right under the muzzle. Next target. The attack has been stopped. All that's left is to finish it off. Drone flies right into the boot. The fire is wrapped around the tank. These 2 infantry fighting vehicles are moving near Ukrainian positions. The vehicle at the rear hits a mine. The first vehicle continues moving, but its luck doesn't last long. It also hits a mine and explodes. An infantry fighting vehicle attempted to break through to Ukrainian positions. Narrow areas are ideal for setting up mines. Observe the poor terrain and trees on one side, and trench lines on the other, making this spot perfect for mines. The vehicle explodes, and the attempt to break through fails due to a single mine. Destruction of a state-of-the-art Russian Yastreb AV counter-battery radar system worth about $250 million in the Kherson region. Most likely, the complex's task was to detect Ukrainian artillery covering the bridgehead in Krinky on the left bank of the occupied part of the Kherson region. But the AFU fighters foiled the enemy's plans. This is a shark filming the effective work of HIMARS destroying a Russian BM-21 Grad MLRS near Kostarizovo, Kherson region. The enemy vehicle was discovered by the 140th Marine Reconnaissance Battalion. And now, take a look at another unusual situation in the Kursk region. Ukrainian drone operators destroy heavy equipment right in the middle of the road. Look, the vehicle has almost completely blocked the path and continues to detonate. Shortly after, the movement of an armored vehicle is detected. The crew realizes that a Ukrainian kamikaze drone is hunting them. They quickly began reversing and stopped between a pile of charred metal that was once a vehicle and an APC, which had nearly flipped over and gotten stuck on the roadside. Look, you can clearly see how 4 Russian soldiers quickly abandon the vehicle and flee from the open area to the greenery near the road. The kamikaze drone strikes the abandoned armored vehicle, igniting a fire. Furthermore, something unexpected occurs.
the flames begin to spread to the APC that is sitting on the roadside. The explosion caused by the detonation of shells that were likely inside the APC also destroys it. The Russians can be said to have helped the Ukrainian drone kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The AFU didn't forget about those tin cans either. Grenade goes straight into the open hatch. Second shot. And the third drone went straight into the fuel tank. We can see trenches, anti-tank pyramids, or so-called dragon's teeth, arranged in 3 rows. Additionally, between each row, there are multiple anti-personnel wire spirals made of barbed wire. All these engineering obstacles are quickly and easily overcome. Heavy equipment is breaking through into Russian territory. Behind it, a light infantry fighting vehicle begins to move forward. The battle begins. A Ukrainian tank opens fire on Russian positions. In response, they fire back, attempting to destroy the tank, but they miss. Eventually, the Russian resistance is crushed, leaving their disoriented soldiers with no choice but to remain in their fortifications and watch as Ukrainian forces advance. But not all the equipment made it through unscathed, so now let's return to the Leopard that was part of the convoy at the beginning of the video. The tank was attacked by a Russian kamikaze drone. The strike from the first drone caused a fire. The second drone hit the tank's running gear. But wait, look closer. The tank's right track has been torn off. This means that even before the drone attack, it hit a mine that immobilized it, and the crew safely abandoned the vehicle. The Leopard accomplished its mission. Not only did it help break through the Russian defense and deliver firepower on enemy positions, but it also saved its crew. Even after being hit by 2 drones, the tank wasn't blown apart, as often happens with Russian vehicles. 2 tanks of the AFU drove to their positions and started fighting. An experienced crew knows how to conduct an effective attack. The first vehicle is firing machine gun fire, which suppresses the enemy forces. Behind it, the second tank fires a series of cannon shots. The tanks line up in a single row and engage in active fire with the Russian group in front. The Ukrainians periodically continue to move to prevent the enemy from taking aim and finding the best position for a counterattack. The shots from the guns are fired in turns. Thus, while one tank is reloading its main weapon, the other is firing. This is how the density of fire is achieved, which does not allow the enemy to recover. Check out how the drone mines an important logistical road. Such a number of mines will definitely stop any vehicle. And here we see a Russian ground kamikaze drone carrying 4 anti-tank mines. It also attempted to break through to Ukrainian positions, but an FPV drone stopped it before it could reach its target. Despite setbacks, both sides recognize the effectiveness of such drones. Ukrainian and Russian military engineers are constantly improving their characteristics. The drones need to be faster, have high maneuverability, and operate in all weather conditions. They're also refining the mine deployment system and other critical features that can be decisive in real combat missions. However, mines don't just appear like mushrooms after rain. They are placed by sappers, and to place them, they need to be stored somewhere. The Russians have been very careless in this regard. For instance, they decided to store mines out in the open on the street of a destroyed village. Just look at this. Hundreds of mines, making an easy target for a drone operator. The explosion wave causes the drone to crash. From another drone at a distance, you can see the force with which the improvised storage exploded. In this video, mines are located right next to Russian positions, likely as they were preparing to plant them in the field. A kamikaze drone disrupted their plans. Those APCs didn't stand a chance. That's where the mines are. They're driving right at them. The occupants lose control. RPG shot. right on the target. Drones are coming in. First one hits the turret. Second drone flies in. Fires getting to the ammo. A magnificent fire show. The Russians tried to break into the city, deploying 6 pieces of equipment for the assault. In such conditions, it's easier to set up a mine trap, with dense tree growth on one side, buildings on the other, and only one road. The area was perfect for an ambush. However, in this case, the kamikaze drones executed a very skillful operation. The first 2 vehicles passed through without issues, but the drone targets the third vehicle. Look at that explosion. The infantry dismounts and scatters in different directions. At the same time, artillery begins to fire. The plans change, and the Russians start to retreat. But suddenly, another drone hits a vehicle. The vehicle at the rear meets the same fate. Look at that spectacular explosion again. Mining the approaches to the city, roads, and fields is a very powerful measure against any columns of equipment. Quality mining is practically impossible to overcome. This mutant APC is already in smoke. We see the Ukrainian drone preparing to strike. A precision hit. Final stop. Spotted a Russian tank and 2 APCs. Ukrainian drones fly out to meet them. First strike. The occupiers are at a loss. Hit in the fuel compartment of the tank. Armored vehicles are left to burn. HIMARS requires only 3 people to operate: a driver, an operator, and a squad leader. This simplifies management and allows for faster deployment to the battlefield. And here's another hit on the convoy. This footage shows the first officially confirmed destruction of a $40 million SA-27 Golem missile guidance and illumination radar station. A very rare air defense system ended its war in the Kherson region after a HIMARS strike. Is another SA-11 Gadfly worth about $100 million. A perfect hit, and the enemy vehicle detonates spectacularly, spewing ammunition. And these are 2 M1990 Farm self-propelled howitzers hidden along a wooded area, each costing $1.6 million, and were destroyed first by one high-precision strike by HIMARS, and then by a second. Third target is trying to maneuver. The vehicle is left in a wooded area. It's burned by a drone strike. And here the Russians ran out of fuel. They were forced to leave the armored vehicles to be torn apart by the drones. Ukrainian drones are happy to carry out this mission. A few strikes are enough to burn an APC and a tank to the ground. The AFU is appreciative of the gift. The drone spotted a column of enemy vehicles and transmitted its coordinates to the artillery. After the first hits, the Russians tried to retreat, but their vehicles were fired upon with both handheld anti-tank weapons and kamikaze drones. This cooperation allowed Ukrainian soldiers to damage or destroy several pieces of enemy equipment before the Russians could withdraw. A Ukrainian tank drives onto the main road of the village and fires with a canopy so that the shell flies over obstacles. Despite the lack of line of sight, the tank manages to hit the enemy, but the Russians were able to respond with a hit from an anti-tank gun. The Ukrainian tank remained intact. Nearly all Russian armored vehicles are very vulnerable to mines.
In Russian tanks, the shells are stored beneath the crew, essentially at the bottom of the tank. When a mine hits the underside, the tank explodes. On the Donetsk front, 2 infantry fighting vehicles were heading for an assault. But they were stopped not by artillery or a kamikaze drone, but by a TM-62 mine. This IFV was attempting to maneuver around something, possibly an obstacle ahead, but it hit a mine. The ammunition exploded, destroying the vehicle. This T-80 is pretty well camouflaged. Several drones are flying to the target at once. First hit. The tank starts to burn. Second hit. And finally, the reactive armor has been penetrated. A devastating blow. This time, it didn't fulfill its task, failing to detect either the Shark UAV or the HIMARS rocket. Modern drones greatly increase the effectiveness of HIMARS strikes on enemy stationary targets, especially deep behind enemy lines. For example, against Russian heavy flamethrower multiple launch rocket systems like the TOS-1A, this is a Russian fire support system based on the T-72 tank, designed to strike enemy personnel, fortifications, and equipment using thermobaric munitions. It is equipped with multiple launch systems capable of firing rockets that create a powerful shockwave and high temperatures, causing severe damage within a radius of several dozen meters. The system has high maneuverability and can operate in various combat conditions.
The Russians are afraid to concentrate a large number of ammunition in one place to avoid the Ukrainians destroying them. Therefore, they disperse the majority of their ammunition. Some of them are hidden in small batches in forest plantations. Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance constantly searches for and destroys such depots. Part of the ammunition is constantly on wheels. They are transported directly from rear depots to the front. Aerial reconnaissance also helps in destroying trucks carrying ammunition. Thus, step by step, the Ukrainians are clearing their land from enemy forces.
Another mutant. The drone is flying towards it. A precision hit, and the APC is stopped. Second hit. And the final one. Now it's a useless pile of metal. HIMARS successfully destroying a lot of valuable Russian equipment behind Russian lines. They work in tandem with aerial reconnaissance guys who use drones to track down targets and relay the coordinates to the HIMARS team, and they strike. Right now you can watch the most accurate flight from HIMARS on the temporary deployment of Russian troops. All personnel that were inside the buildings were neutralized.
Recently, the Ukrainians tracked down a large ammunition depot and abandoned buildings on the outskirts of the city of Donetsk. During the night, a precise missile strike was carried out on this depot using HIMARS. The ammunition immediately started detonating and scattering in all directions, but after just a few seconds, a massive explosion occurred, illuminating the entire city. One of the local residents managed to capture that moment on video. But that's not the biggest explosion in the city. The largest explosion during this war occurred in the Ukrainian city of Khmelnytsky. The Russians hit warehouses where outdated ammunition was stored. When the ammunition exploded, many thought that the Russians had used tactical nuclear weapons because it resembled a so-called nuclear mushroom cloud. Fortunately, the city didn't suffer much damage as the warehouses were located on the premises of a disposal plant.
Everything begins to burn. Thick black smoke envelops the battlefield for a while, but not for long. The vehicles smolder, and the artillery-ravaged fields fill with new scrap metal, taking on a familiar appearance as they await the next assault. This meat pot doesn't even realize it's going right into the mines. Very powerful explosion. Take another look.